Our next presentation in today's lead marketing conference from CPG Matters deals with how top CPG brands are driving on shelf availability. Our presenter is Matt Greene of Trax Retail. Matt, take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the time today, and happy Wednesday. As mentioned, I'm going to talk to you all about what we're seeing in terms of trends in the industry, what's changing in terms of ease of keeping products on shelf and on display, and ultimately what many CPGs like you are doing about it. I'm going to talk a little bit about our company in terms of what solutions that we offer and how we help prevent this overall kind of systemic issue that we're seeing across retail in most channels, if not all channels. As mentioned, my name is Matt Greene. I work for a company called Trax Retail. Trax was invented in 2010 and has been around, entered the U.S. market about 7 or 8 years ago. We've learned a ton about what's going on with our CPGs today. We support countries and over 90 different companies worldwide, and ultimately have a few different solutions that I'm excited to walk you all through. So we're going to start with a quick poll question, and Linda and team, if you wouldn't mind putting that out to the market, we would love to hear some feedback here. Do you think your current merchandising efforts are as effective as they could be? And if you guys wouldn't mind voting, I will basically be reviewing the results in real time. All right, we'll give it 10 more seconds here as the polls come in. And I think I see where this is going. Our expectation, kind of what we're seeing in the market, is that most CPGs do a great job merchandising in certain channels and certain banners, but there's really something to be left desired across the board. And as your results are showing here, 2% of you are saying that your merchandising is not effective at all. About 12% call it slightly effective. In the vast majority, moderately effective. And we're going to talk about what it is that we can do to help you with this problem. So I'm going to advance the slides. Okay. Starting with what many CPGs are saying. So we know that about 4% of annual sales are lost due to in-store execution and compliance. And when you stack that up, even though that number seems small, it's quite large in terms of top-line revenue. We also know that many CPGs, about 40%, are losing desired results in what they are spending for trade, whether that is due to retail execution issues, displays not going up in time, windows of execution being off, and so on and so forth. We know that promotion spend is not yielding the desired results that many CPGs are looking for. And we also know that about 62% of CPG executives are saying that they lack data to make strategic business decisions. And this is ironic in the sense that many other CPGs are also suffering from what we call analysis paralysis, where they have so much data that they don't quite know what to do with it. And synthesizing that and turning that into something that is actionable, usable, and realistic to drive sales is a tough thing for CPGs to do. We also know that winning at retail is not easy. The pandemic has changed a lot about how execution looks in many different channels and many different banners. Some key themes that have really jumped out to us are CPGs saying that they're blind to retail execution, that they also don't know where they should be prioritizing retail execution. And because labor has gotten more expensive, they're not certain that it's even an investment that they want to make. Moving to kind of the other side of the coin, we also have shoppers that are telling us, and we'll talk a little bit about our application that we use to gain shopper intel. But we have everyday shoppers that are saying that they are not as loyal as they used to be. When brands are not on the shelf, they will make sure that they are finding something else, and that will turn into a replacement. You can see on the far right, 85% of our shoppers said that they would change brands if they were incentivized to do so. And they also said that 38% of them said that they bought different brands because their product was out of stock. So you can see that really this, both from the CPG perspective, retail execution is a really hard thing to do right now, and it's not necessarily in the best spot in terms of the overall CPG industry. And then also, shoppers are becoming less and less loyal. And we view this as a really important thing to capitalize on and really make sure that we can have both consumer experience be better in store as well as CPG experience be better in terms of keeping products on shelf. And really, in summary, we don't view retail execution as a one size fits all approach. We know that based off of different banners, based off of different channels and different, quite honestly, segments, there's many different approaches to merchandising in store. We call this our route to market. And a route to market is basically how a CPG puts product on the shelf. That route to market can look very different based off of the channel that's being serviced and even the accounts within the channel. And lastly, we think about retail execution differently. We believe that this industry is broken to an extent, and that there's a lot of opportunity for us to change how people think about retail execution, how brands execute, and ultimately how consumers find products. So, what is our company? We're a data driven, tech enabled company that insists on smarter decisions and actions at shelf. And really, all of this is powered through two main components: cutting edge computer technology. In our last presentation, we heard a lot about generative AI and how it's being used in the industry. We're very much at the forefront of that. And then also a very vast network of shoppers and merchandisers that are there to help represent your brand and keep it on shelf. We have three main solutions at our company, and this is what's fueling our strategy. And ultimately, we've seen that these solutions are being used industry wide in a lot of different capacities. And I want to talk to you about what they are. The first one would be measurement. We view measurement as computer vision technology and fueled by computer vision technology. And quite simply, it's the ability to take a photo of what's in the store, process that data, and then turn that into actionable KPIs. We use AI to basically recognize all of the different SKUs that are on a shelf or on a display and turn that into data that can be used by a CPG and reacted to based off of the real time conditions. We've also supported image recognition technology with an on demand, flexible workforce of merchandisers, which we call dynamic merchandising. What this is this allows CPGs to react to the conditions that we are reporting on shelf and helping them close the gaps that we see if their specific sales reps or specific service providers are not able to in a timely enough fashion. At the end of the day, what we want to do is make sure that we keep your products on shelf, and this flexible labor model is a great way to do that. And then last but not least, Trax has a shopper engagement platform called Shopkick. What Shopkick is it's full funnel activation, and it's really a way to enable a CPG to advertise outside of a store, bring foot traffic into a store, and then ultimately translate that into a purchase or consumer engagement on a product. So, in a practical example, you could think of someone that has our application. That is sitting on their couch reviewing an advertisement or a lookbook for a new and emerging brand, gaining some sort of share of mind, and then ultimately taking that, walking into the store, interacting with that brand, possibly even buying that brand, and then turning into a brand loyalist. We're going to go one by one. I want to explain to you about what these various solutions look like to give you a practical application. So the first one is going to be our measurement solution. And I'm going to paste a video into here that we'll play hopefully for you all that shows a little bit about what happens when we are in the store with our application, capturing what the shelf and what displays look like. If you guys can see this, this is called our product called Field Optimizer. What this means is we are putting this in a field force's hands. We are walking them into the store with our application. They're photographing the shelf. They're then basically getting results that are analyzed in real time. And that then turns into actionable KPIs that tells them what their on-shelf availability is, what their share of shelf is, what their competitive footprint looks like, and so on and so forth. All of this data then gets pushed to our cloud and processed in a way that is, I'd say, much more detailed in terms of KPIs that we offer, and allows headquarters to make decisions around specific trends that they're seeing in the field. This application can be used not just with Salesforce and field reps, but also through various techniques of crowdsourcing, et cetera, and allows for a lot of different approaches for someone to capture the shelf, understand what's there, and then ultimately react to it. As you can see, the data enters our factory in a disaggregate format. So on the top here, you can see a bunch of images that go left to right of the aisle. What we then do is we stitch those images together in a linear view so that someone at the brand can virtually walk the store. That then leads to masking of products where all of the different products on that shelf are masked. And then algorithmically, what we do is we tag all of the SKUs in that aisle. That then determines a KPI. So you can see a world or think of a world where you want to know how your brand blocking is. You want to know where you are versus your competitors. You want to know where your price points are versus competition, and so on and so forth. This is the result that we're going to be able to present to you in that fashion. What does this do? So many CPGs use image recognition technology to gain efficiency in store. They know that as their labor has gotten more expensive and really become more and more of a premium, they're trying to make things more efficient with how they do surveys, how they do audits, how they understand what the category looks like. And we're seeing really good results from those that use image recognition. You can see on the left here, we've seen reductions in time in store, time per call by about 50% in many cases, which really then leads to a lot more value added selling time for specific companies to work on key accounts, to work on strategy with with the retailer, to make sure that they can do the things that they would deem value add and worth their time. This also leads to strong results, generally increases in facing, distribution, share of shelf, and that doesn't just magically happen, but that occurs from using this data to make data-driven decisions about how the product should look, how the product should be sold in, number of facings, share and category, et cetera. And ultimately, what this leads to is a higher increase in top-line sales opportunity. I now want to talk to you about the second pillar, which would be our flexible workforce. I mentioned earlier that we don't view it as good enough to just tell the story of what's going on the shelf. We want to be able to react to the conditions that we're reporting. And so we have built an on-demand service that allows for, think of in a Uber or a Lyft model, where you have vetted merchandisers sitting on our platform that can ultimately augment your specific sales reps, or replace the work that they're doing by going into a store and ultimately walking into the back room and interacting with products, engaging with the products, putting them back on shelf for you, and keeping that shelf very healthy. A couple of things that this workforce does, and I don't want to necessarily pigeonhole them to one or two specific things, but we do restocking. There's a lot of price tag activity. If we see a specific price tag that has fallen off a shelf, we are going to help replace that and work with the store manager to ultimately cut that product back in. That leads to increased facings. We work on category resets, as well as other components, secondary placements, display activations, product sell-ins, et cetera. And to give you just a better picture of what this process looks like, I want to share just a quick video that will show you a bit about a day in the life of someone in our flexible workforce.
Hi, I'm Sandra, and I'm a FlexForce worker for Trax, and this is a day in the life. Here you'll see me walking into a King Soopers in Denver, Colorado, where I will be working on a merchandising project. The first thing I do when I enter the store is open the Merchandiser app to see what project I'll be working on today. Today I will be working with a brand called Roar Organic in the beverage aisle. The first thing I do is check in with customer service and ask for the manager of the beverage department. This manager's name is Travis, and he'll be useful for accessing the stockroom and for getting new stock ordered. Travis was a great guy. He told me anything I need to let him know. Coming from a retail background myself, I love when a store manager takes that much pride in their job. It makes my life as a merchandiser easier, but also the stores generally look better for the shoppers. I first checked the refrigerator for Roar but didn't find anything, so I moved to the shelf. Okay, I found the Roar products. It's a mess, but it's pretty typical. It's not exactly easy for shoppers to buy. As instructed by the app, I will now take pictures of the shelf. Trax processes these pictures through their image recognition software. This is so important because Roar will want to understand the conditions of the shelf before and after my visit. I found all 3 Roar SKUs, but one of the price tags was missing, so I asked my friend Travis if he would print a new one. He did this, which means I just helped Roar close a void. I see this happen all the time on the shelf, and I imagine brands have no idea why they lost the space. Travis then gave me permission to grab the stock I need from the back room. Here I am headed to the back. I find the product, and now I'm ready to merchandise the shelf. So back to the shelf. Time to reveal how I changed the presents for Roar. And boom, here's what I did. The key thing about merchandising is to simply follow the app instructions. The app ensures I must complete each task in turn. I can't complete the visit until every task is complete. Wrapping up the visit, I meet with Travis and hand him the Roar sell sheet. The project went great. I've completed the project. Trax will check it's all good and I'll get paid, my rating goes up, and I get more jobs.
So hopefully that helps paint the picture on specifically what an on-demand merchandiser will be doing. And a little bit about the workforce. Everybody is graded on performance and experience. So you probably have a video, the rep that we're interviewing following comes from a retail background. You can see that there's various different types of experience that each of our reps have, and that is what allows us to generate the work that they be receiving. And what we do is match supply with demand in terms of skill sets, personas, and ultimately the work that a CPG has. A little bit about this field force. So we've completed about 853,000 visits in 2022. We are in most, if not every, major chain in many different independents as well. We offer 100% dedicated coverage with this rep. So they're going in as an extension of the brand, not necessarily as a syndicated provider like you might see in other models. And every visit that goes through merchandising and comes back to us gets quality assured. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a customer success story that leveraged both dynamic merchandising, which I just walked you through, as well as our image recognition technology in a product that we call contract compliance. As many of you guys probably know, Enjoy is one of our largest, or one of the largest e-cigarette manufacturers in the United States, and they're growing quite rapidly. And their problem was that they did not have a large enough field force for them to successfully grow their marketplace in the region. They enlisted us and many folks, exactly like the video that you just watched, to help them basically be an extension of their workforce. We sent these people into stores to help basically with product facings, make sure that they had appropriate share on their shelf, and ultimately to sell in new products as they needed to. And what they saw pretty quickly was a great lift from using this flexible workforce. And they took it one step further, where they then began leveraging our image recognition technology to capture images when you're in the store. So not only are they more dynamic in their workforce, but they now are building a strong data set on what's actually happening in stores nationwide. What did this allow them to do? So one consistent metric that many of our customers and many in CPG manage is a CMA metric, basically customer marketing agreements. And what that means, as I'm sure everybody knows, is you specifically as a CPG are paying based off of execution on the agreement of your products in the store and how they're advertised, how they're promoted, how they're faced, etc. What they were doing was spending a ton of time with their reps prior to working with us, taking photos of the store, sending those photos to an inbox, having analysts sit down and basically pick through the data and validate what was happening in these stores, and then turning it into spend that they would be giving to the retailer. And we found that they were spending over 80 hours a week doing this. What they were able to then do based off of the data that we were collecting with our flexible merchandisers and then processing through image recognition was cut that out completely. They built the KPIs to report against the standards that they needed to, and that saved them a ton of time. Additionally, they were able to save money on merchandising. They were working with a lot of expensive merchandising providers prior to Trax that ultimately were just not operating as efficiently as they needed to. So they were able to be much more efficient with how their route to market looked, what they were spending to put people in stores, and ultimately it led to a great success story where they ended up really taking a significant share in the marketplace here in the US. One thing that I wanted to also share is what this experience looks like from an image perspective. Now, it's a little bit it's probably small on the screen, but what this is a screenshot of our Trax Explorer tool. And this basically shows that on the left here, before the merchandiser went in, you can see that the shelf did not look great. I think there are 2 SKUs there that were on shelf. The merchandiser goes in, they work with the manager, they either place orders for the products or ultimately pick them out of the back room and put them back on the shelf. They then image the shelf. And what that does is it turns into images that are SKUs that we are then going to tag, which then helps them with basically their analytical view of what's happening at that store and many other stores. A couple of things about
Matt, yeah,
KPI.
Matt, 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 we had a question to come in. I'd
Sure,
like to
sure.
pose to you right now.
Yep.
Retail theft or shrink is a big topic today. What is Trax doing to help minimize this problem?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and it's a great point as well. Theft and shrink are happening in many different channels across the board, and it's a lot of feedback comes from CPG saying exactly that. We are not specifically offering solutions to minimize threat or minimize that threat in terms of defensive merchandising. We're not offering hardware that will basically sit on a product that will prevent theft. But what we do is, because we have backroom access with many of our merchandisers, and because we are able to tell the story of what's going on shelf and identify specific trends at stores, that allows basically retailers to understand phantom inventory issues, understand where their orders are off due to theft problems that they might be seeing, and ultimately turn that into a better way to combat a store level problem if there is one. But even though it's a huge issue, I'm not going to say that that's something that we are offering a solution specifically for, but we are offering the data points that allow you to really understand what's going on in that store and attack it from multiple different angles.
Okay, one more question, Matt, that came in
Sure.
5 minutes ago. Do you apply a next best action approach for your machine vision field application? Beyond image rec, how is AI working behind the scenes?
We do. It's a great question. So we have native applications in our mobile field force or our mobile application, excuse me, that allow the rep in store to know what they need to do based off of what they've just reported and what has been annotated on the shelf. But one thing that is quite interesting is we've recently built a very strong partnership with Salesforce. And Salesforce, as you guys probably all keenly know, they have so much data behind the scenes around what's going on at an outlet level that we would not be able to capture just through image recognition. So what we've done is we've basically built our application behind the scenes on the Salesforce CG Cloud app, and that allows our KPIs to interact directly and natively with the Salesforce metrics or the CRM metrics that are living there to then provide a next best action about what needs to happen in store. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? I'm not able to see them here, so if you have them, please just call it out.
That's all we have. That's all we have so far.
Okay, cool. So now that we've painted the picture about the ability to send a merchandiser into the store, and then ultimately capture images of what's going on in the store, I want to walk you through what these KPIs specifically look like. And there are multiple different packages and products that we have based off of industry standards, who needs to do what with the data, and quite honestly, what many CPGs end up using it for. But just to give you an example of key KPIs that many of our customers have with us: product presence, product share, product position, and basically visual components of what's going on the shelf. So blocking, adjacencies, sequential scanning, et cetera, order of the shelf. And then on the second line here, price, promotion, results, and that's conditional logic, kind of as you just mentioned. That is, if this exists, then that is the result based off of the condition on the shelf. And then we can basically add survey questions to any of the data that gets processed through image recognition. So you might know some more things about what's going on in the shelf, such as depth of product, inventory on hand, et cetera, that you just wouldn't be able to derive from image recognition. I want to then go to the third pillar of the company, and this is the shopper pillar that we talked about. And our company has an application, Shopkick, that candidly many people on the phone probably use as an everyday consumer. As I mentioned earlier, Shopkick is an engagement platform that creates awareness of products, brings consumers into the store, and then ultimately rewards them for their activities in the store interacting with those SKUs. Anyone can download it, and we have about 1 million and some change active shoppers at any point in time that are constantly interacting with many brands on this call and many brands around the world in retail. And I'll give you an example of how some of our customers, specifically this one, it's a company called Fruitsballs, use Shopkick. So I bet many have not heard of the company Fruitsballs. Maybe you have, maybe you've not. But I certainly hadn't before they became a customer. And they're an interesting category because they're basically an innovation company that is in between snacks and spreadables in terms of the segment that they play in. And they're a company that is abroad that wanted to enter the U.S. market. They did a great job entering through Walmart, and pretty quickly realized that they needed to double down on the investments, given that it's very competitive in store, and Walmart, if products are selling there, that's typically a good sign of what's to come. So they enlisted Shopkick to basically pulse consumers to these products for a couple of key reasons. One, they weren't really sure where consumers were trying to interact with the SKU. Candidly, they weren't even sure where it was merchandised in the store. And that this basically was used as an application to drive the consumer to that specific product, give us really good data and give them really good data about where the product was, and bring foot traffic to something that might be tougher to find just due to the segment that they were playing in. They also wanted to create interest out of the store in the brand to bring this consumer to the store to then interact with the SKU. And so they used us for video marketing, lookbooks, et cetera, so that people were basically interacting with this product before they even got to the brick and mortar store. And then when they were there, they were bringing even more traffic to it. And what did that lead to? That led to very high amounts of shelf engagements, a lot of impressions on the campaign that we were running with them. So it created basically share of mind on a new innovative SKU. And then ultimately, it led to a lot of purchases. It led to the product moving off the shelf a lot faster. And we're happy to report that they've done a very good job in the marketplace since then. We're not going to say obviously that we're the only reason, but this helped really kickstart an accelerated path to entering the U.S. market. I say all this because I have one more poll question, and I want to talk about how all of this pulls together into kind of a new and innovative approach of managing and monitoring the shelf, and then ultimately reacting to it. So, Linda, if you wouldn't mind just giving this one more quick poll question. What areas of store level execution would you improve using continuous and cost-effective analytics. And if the team wouldn't mind starting to answer on this, that would be great. We'll give this about 10 more seconds. And as the data starts coming in, candidly, this is exactly what I thought would happen, where it speaks to the earlier point in the conversation where there's a lot of data in store, but there's still a lot of kind of dark rooms where people aren't really certain, what's happening. I used to work at Nielsen, so I'm keenly aware that Nielsen or Circana data is blended into most, if not all, CPGs day to day. And ultimately, there's a lot of other good data sources too. But based off of the results that we're seeing here, it seems like across the board, the CPGs on the call, at least, they have questions about basically everything. And I want to walk you through how we would answer this type of question. So let me go back to the presentation. So our theory is that, back to merchandising, there's a lot of inefficient spend trying to solve a lot of the problems that you just explained that you're looking for. And what we want to really pressure test in the market is if a CPG knew where their retail problems existed before they sent people in to go fix them, how much more powerful would that be for the brand? And this has led to a product that we call signal-based merchandising. And this is combining really all of the three assets that I talked about earlier in our company overview into one, which has led to really, really cool market receptivity, as well as a different and an innovative way to think about merchandising. So what is signal-based merchandising? It's a continuous and cost-effective approach for assessing what's going on at store using the millions of engaged shoppers and merchandisers that we have on our platforms to basically react at the right time, at the right place to keep your products on shelf and stable. What do we call signals? Signals are basically retail data points that empower us to make the right decisions for your brand based on a bunch of objectives that we work on with you: sales velocity, specifically, outlet, ACV, shelf conditions, where merchandising needs to happen or where it doesn't. And we'll talk about what this looks like practically. So how this process works is we send our engaged shopper network that I mentioned to you earlier out into the market to basically scout for multiple different SKUs that you view as something that is important. We have them constantly interacting with these SKUs on the shelf, and then that turns into basically a data set for us to understand what stores need the most help based off of product availability and based off of what is showing to the everyday consumer. From there, we then use that data, put it through a command center that we call it, that basically outputs what stores would be most cost effective and drive the highest ROI for you to send merchandising help to. Whether that is a route that needs to be, or a rep that needs to be rerouted that you already have, whether it means a service provider that you're working with to, basically also reroute, whether it means working with us to fire up our flexible merchandising workforce or something else. Our number one goal is not that you use us, but it's to keep products on shelf. From there, the workforce, whoever it might be, goes in and solves the problem, resolves the issue with the store level manager, with the employee that's working the shelf, and then ultimately that leads to an increase in sales. And it's based off the entire principle that we're not sending you data about where you should not be. Said differently, we're trying to make sure that any dollar you put towards merchandising goes the furthest in terms of where the problems are and where the sales velocity will increase the most. So let's talk about a practical application. So one of our customers, Bimbo Brands, had a couple of SKUs that ultimately were high focuses for them, and they weren't certain what was happening in the market. They had more questions than answers, and I go back to the point about there just wasn't, there wasn't a ton of bright light shining on what the story of these SKUs were. So what we did was we put these two SKUs into our shopper application, and within 3 days, gathered a bunch of data points, signals as I call them, around 2,154 Walmarts that basically showed us exactly where that product was selling, where it was not selling, where it was merchandised, where it was not merchandised, and where we would need to send the most help to keep products on store. Um, this was, alarmingly, there was an out of stock rate of over 2 days, and it was really good data that we brought back to our category team, that allowed them to help kind of with the get well plan and what needed to happen in Walmart with these SKUs. As I talked about earlier, the way that we think about where to send merchandising help is using these 4 blocks. So we have an observe block where basically it's shelf health is good, um, and store issues are present, but the sales are not very high in that store. So even if we did spend money to improve, that ultimately would not drive the most lift for the customer. Um, we have then an analyze where store sales are high, issues are low. We want to watch them. And then 3 and 4 obviously are the 2 buckets that are most important, that are going to be part of our ongoing blitz, if you will, where we're going to be pushing resources, pushing on-demand merchandisers to basically get into the doors and keep products on shelf. And that's driven very much by the sales that we believe we can impact. And what does that lead to? So for customers we've been working with, we are able to see anywhere between a 2 and 4.5% ROI on a typical program, meaning that the spend that they have with us to assess and monitor the stores leads to over a 2 to 4.5x return on top line sales, which is really cool to see. And again, I go back to the premise of we believe that merchandising just isn't done as effectively as it needs to be. And our main goal is changing that. So in summary, there's really 3 different things I want the group to take away from this. Our company is really focused on product availability on shelf using these 3 key pillars: image recognition or measurement, merchandising services, and shopper. We also have solutions that stand alone independently and quite independently, but we believe that the value of our core offering is within the 3 being integrated together, in the approach that I just walked you through. And then ultimately, I believe that because the company has been part of many different CPG, strategies over the years, there's a lot of offering that we can give to help you specifically win in the marketplace. But most importantly, I want the group to take away that there's a lot of innovative thinking and thought behind how you put products on shelf and keep them on shelf for the best consumer, applications. With that being said, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Sure, there are a few more that came in. One, in large stores, would it not be faster for reps to use a video solution rather than take photos that are stitched together?
Right. So the answer is yes, it would be. There are various applications that we've been able to apply to the image collection process that has really increased the speed of capture. The second point, though, that I would say on that is that when you are doing video collection, rarely do you get the same output that you would get sent to headquarters around what the shelf actually looks like. So some of our customers have candidly said the exact same thing. And then when we go further into the discovery and the details, we've learned that they value the pictures and the still images so much because they're able to use it in buyer conversations, in category conversations with their sales team, that they don't want to move away from it. And that's ultimately why we don't do video-based collection. That being said, and I'll just
Okay.
say one more thing. We are working on implementing augmented reality into our shopper application that does on-device data production that ultimately will lead to a video-like experience for anybody in the world to use that can get a bunch of strong data points to be used for the various kind of use cases that I mentioned earlier.
Okay, another question. Does Trax offer any kind of competitive intelligence on in-store execution?
We do. That is basically the core of the offering. So if you are in the store and we are collecting data for you, our expectation is that you would be using that data collection for much more than just your brand and your SKUs. We process hundreds of thousands of SKUs. There are certain programs that we run where we are recognizing 20, 25, 30,000 SKUs within one environment. And clearly that those are not all part of one specific brand or CPG. They're looking at full shelf and full category.
Okay, another question. How can I get real-time visibility into what's happening with my on-shelf SKUs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, to the last, I guess, chapter that I walked you guys through, signal-based merchandising, what we would do is we would take your power SKUs, let's call it somewhere between 5 and 10 that you really wanted to manage. Those power SKUs would then go into our shopper application. The data would basically start coming nearly immediately because we have many engaged users that are constantly using this app to get rewards in store. And that data then goes directly to a cloud-based dashboard that you would have access to, and you could see kind of instantaneously what's happening in the market with these SKUs. That's only going to
Okay,
get
well,
you
that's all the time.
sorry, one more thing, John. That's only going to get you a
Yeah.
peripheral view in terms of what the shelves look like to the everyday consumer. What we would then do is we would either work with you or we would work with our workforce, our flexible workforce. We then go in and we'd have a much more detailed view of backroom conditions, photos that come with that, rest of shelf conditions, etc. And we're actively working towards putting photo capture in our shoppers' hands too, so you'd be able to get that data point very quickly on what the shelf looks like as well.
Okay, final question. Can image recognition be integrated with marketing analytics platforms to deliver a more comprehensive data for decision making?
Yes. So we offer several standalone solutions that can be leveraged for various use cases, many of which are marketing based use cases. But we're also keenly aware that there's a lot of smart people in the CPG industry that have much different ambitions on how they want to use this data in different dashboards, different platforms, different approaches to analytics. So, another thing that we have is the ability to hook up an API and send basically raw data in its disaggregate format that comes as an output of everything we do over to the CPG so they can use it, ingest it, and put it into whatever reporting mechanism they need. Most of the time when that happens, it's because they're blending other data points on top of the execution data to do a lot of what you just explained. So we think that our dashboards are pretty strong in terms of getting what the core customer use cases are, but we also know that there's a lot of different needs for it that we just couldn't possibly solve for in one dashboard.
Okay, excellent. That's all the time we have for questions. And there were a lot of questions, Matt. So it speaks for an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank
So
you
for
so
more
much.
information about this, absolutely, for more information about this topic, or if you have more questions, please reach out to Matt Greene directly at mattg@traxretail.com.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Matt.